Once upon a time there was an old king who, lying on his sickbed, thought, and quote, "This time I will probably lie here and go forever," and quote. So he ordered, "Call faithful Johannes here for me." Johannes was loyal and devoted to the king all his life, loved by the king, that and number 39, that's why he was called loyal Johannes. When Johannes came to his bedside, the king conveyed his destiny. "Johannes is the most loyal of my life. We are almost far from heaven and earth. I no longer have to worry about anything other than the prince who is still young and doesn't and #39 know how to think clearly. If you Don and number 39 promise in front of me that you will teach the prince to grow into a good man, and advise him to take care of him like a second father, then I cannot rest assured and close my eyes." Johannes faithfully said, "I will wholeheartedly try to serve the prince, even if I have to sacrifice my life. I will not leave the prince." The king said, "If so, I can safely return to the 9 springs." Then the king continued, "After I die, you should take the prince to see the entire palace, all the chambers, rooms, vaults and all the treasures in it. Only the last room in the long hallway you are not allowed to show the prince. In the chamber where the portrait of Princess Mai Vang is kept, just a glimpse of the princess and number 39's face will make the prince fall in love and faint, which will lead to dangerous disasters. Please be careful about that." After hearing Johannes faithfully raise his hand to swear again, the king remained silent, slowly laid his head on the pillow and died. After taking care of the funeral, shortly after, Johannes told the young king what he promised his father before his death. He said, "I will keep my promise according to my conscience, I will be loyal and devoted." With the young king as with his father in the past, he would do it even if he had to sacrifice his life. After the period of mourning for his father had expired, Johannes told the king, "Now is the time for the king to know what he has inherited. I would like to take the king to see the entire palace his father left behind." He took the king to see everywhere in the palace, up and down to see all the treasures, but he did not open the room where the charming portrait was kept. The portrait was facing the door, so you could see it just by opening the door. The picture was so vivid and splendid that people thought no one on earth could be more beautiful. The king saw John pass by without opening the door, so he asked, "Why Don and number 39? You open the door?" Johannes replied, "Yes, there is something very ominous in it." But the king said, "I want to see everything in the royal palace. I also want to know what is in this room." The king stepped forward and was about to push the door open. Loyal Johannes quickly held back and said, "I have promised my father that I will not open this chamber door. If the king finds out about it, it will be the greatest misfortune for His Majesty as well as for me." The young king replied, "Why not? We will wither and languish because we cannot see with our own eyes what is in there. I1 and number 39 leave here if you Don and number 39 open the door." Knowing he could N and #39 stop him, loyal Johannes sighed sadly and looked for the room key in the key chain. Opening the chamber door, he entered first, standing to cover the portrait, but the king stood on tiptoe and looked over his shoulder. Seeing the portrait of a gorgeous young woman wearing gold and gems, the king lost consciousness. Johannes faithfully lifted the king to bed, his heart fluttering with worry. "Oh my God! Misfortune has come, what to do now?" Uncle used wine to massage, and as soon as he woke up, the king asked, "Oh my God! What is the name of the beauty in the painting?" Johannes faithfully replied, "Yes, that is Princess Mai Vang." The king immediately continued, "I love you so passionately that even if all the leaves in the forest turned into tongues, it would not be possible to express my love. Living with her is my life and number 39's ideal. Faithful Johannes, please help me in this." Johannes thought faithfully, but only later did he come up with an idea and said, "Everything around her is made of gold, from tables and chairs to cups and other household items. In the royal palace warehouse there are a total of 5 tons of gold." His Majesty took a ton of gold and gave it to the goldsmith to make all kinds of glasses, household decorations, and some strange birds and animals in the forest. Once done, I and number 39 LL show these things to you. I and number 39 am sure you and number 39 LL be happy. Your Majesty, just try that. The king ordered messengers to invite jewelers from all over the country to come to the palace to work. When the beautiful gold objects were finished, the king had them loaded onto the boat. Johannes dressed as a merchant, and so did the king. My king crossed the sea to the city where Princess Mai Vang lives. Loyal Johannes went ashore and told the king to wait on the boat. Who knows, maybe the princess will return to the boat with me. His Majesty ordered the decoration and display of everything so that it was splendid. He brought with him a lot of beautiful jewelry and went straight towards the palace. While in the palace courtyard, Johannes saw a beautiful girl standing by the well taking water and pouring it into 2 golden barrels. While carrying a load, she saw a stranger and asked who he was. He replied, "Sir, I am a merchant." Then he opened the jewelry for her to see. She exclaimed, "Oh my God, it and number 39's all gold jewelry." She put down the water bucket and looked at one thing after another. Then she said, "The princess really likes gold jewelry. Seeing these things, the princess will definitely buy them all immediately." The girl carrying water is the princess and number 39's maid. She took him to meet the princess. The princess was very pleased with Johannes and number 39's jewelry and said, "The goods are so beautiful, I bought all of them." Johannes replied, "I am just the servant of a rich businessman. The things I brought here cannot be compared to the jewelry my master left on the boat, which is all pure gold and pearls." The princess said to bring them all for me to see and choose. Johannes replied, "There and number 39's a whole boat full of goods. It would take many days to carry them. Perhaps there Aaron and hash 39's enough rooms in the palace to display those things." Those words made the princess even more curious and eager. She said, "Then take me there to see the goods." Johannes happily led the princess back to the boat to see the goods. Seeing that the princess was even more beautiful than the person in the painting, the king and number 39's heart was so ecstatic and happy that his heart would burst. The princess stepped off the boat, and the king came out to welcome her into the boat compartment. Meanwhile, Johannes faithfully went down to the stern and ordered the anchor to be raised. Raise the sails so the boat can fly as fast as a bird. Inside the boat, the king showed the princess sets of bowls, plates, cups, bowls, birds, animals, and even animals that the princess had never seen before. All are pure gold. The princess was so engrossed in watching that she didn't and #39 know that the boat had been anchored for several hours. Looking at the last piece of jewelry, the princess expressed her thanks and wanted to leave. When she got to the side of the boat, the princess realized that the boat was sailing on the open sea. She was afraid and cried out, "Oh my God, I was deceived. If I fell into the hands of a merchant, I would rather die." The king held her hand and said, "I am not a merchant, I am a noble family, a king ruling a country. Because I was so passionately in love with the person in the painting, I decided to find and plot to kidnap her." Listening to the king, the princess felt that she was also supportive. Now she felt grateful and expressed her agreement. One day, while the boat was floating in the ocean, Johannes was whistling when he heard the sound of birds. Looking up, he saw 3 crows flying. They were talking to each other. One said, "Well, the king has kidnapped Princess Mai Vang." The second child continued, "Surely he won her heart." The third child chimed in, "Why not? You two are sitting next to each other." The first one said again, "Are you sure? When you reach the shore, the king will jump on a red horse, and it will fly away, carrying the king to cloud 9. Then the king will never see her again." The second child asks, "So there is no way to save it?" "Well, yes. If at that moment another person also jumped on the horse and immediately pulled out a gun and shot it dead, the king would have been saved. But who knows? Anyone who knows and speaks out will be immediately turned to stone." The second child added, "Even if the horse is killed, it is unlikely that he will marry the princess." Because when the two returned to the palace, they saw a wedding dress in a golden vase. The shiny dress seemed to be woven of gold thread but was actually made of brimstone and resin. "If you wear the clothes, the king will be burned to ashes." The third child asks, "So there is no way to save it?" The second crow replied, "Well, yes. If someone wears gloves and throws that shirt into the fire until it burns, the king will escape. But who knows? Anyone who knows and speaks out will be turned to stone from the knees to the heart." The third crow said, "Even if that shirt burns to ashes, the king will still not be able to live with her." Because after the wedding, while dancing, the princess suddenly turned pale and fell unconscious on the spot. She would have died if someone hadn't and #39 come and lifted her up, sucked 3 drops of blood from her right breast and then immediately spit them out. But who knows? If anyone knows and speaks out, that person and number 39's entire body from head to toes will turn to stone. Listening to the crows talking to each other, Johannes understood everything. He became thoughtful and did not bother to say anything. If he did not tell the king, he would suffer. If he told the king, he would die. But then he thought to himself, "We must save the king even if we lose." The boat docked. Things happened exactly as the crows talked to each other. Seeing the beautiful red horse coming forward, the king said, "Great, let me ride it back to the palace." Before the king could get on his horse, Johannes jumped on the horse and number 39's back, pulled out a gun and shot the horse dead. Being jealous of Johannes, the other servants shouted, "How rude! The horse was brought to take the king back to the palace and he dared to shoot him to death." But the king shouted, "You all shut up immediately." There was definitely a reason for what Johannes did faithfully. The whole group returned to the palace and saw the wedding dress that looked like it was woven from gold and silver threads. The king was about to try it on, but Johannes immediately grabbed it, took the shirt and threw it into the fire to burn to ashes. The other servants shouted again, "See, he still dared to throw the king and number 39's wedding dress into the fire." But the king shouted again, "You all shut up immediately." There was certainly a reason for what Johannes did faithfully. Marriage was celebrated. Dance music sounded and the princess entered the room. Johannes stared closely at her face. Suddenly her face turned pale and she fell unconscious. Faithful John quickly lifted her up, took her back to her room, and laid her on the bed. Then he knelt down, sucked 3 drops of blood from her right breast and spit them out. The princess slowly woke up. The king was also there, not understanding why Johannes did what he did. Angry at heaven, the king said, "Imprison him immediately in the dungeon." The very next morning, Johannes was sentenced to death. Standing next to Johannes and #39's gallows, he said, "Before being executed, every death row prisoner is allowed to speak one last time, so am I allowed?" The king said, "Okay, you are allowed to speak one last time." Johannes said loyally, "I was wronged. I have always been loyal and devoted to the king." Then he told the king what the 3 crows said to each other at sea, and he explained clearly why he did such things, all just to save the king. At that moment the king cried out, "Oh, poor my faithful Johannes! Let him away from the gallows, let him at once." As soon as he finished speaking, John fell down like a falling stone. Faced with that scene, the king and queen were very sad. The king said, "My God, I have unjustly treated such a devoted person." The king ordered Johannes to be turned into a statue and placed next to his bed. Every time he saw the statue, the king cried and said, "Oh, faithful Johannes, I wish I could bring you back to life." Some time later, the queen gave birth to twins, 2 sons. That is the queen and number 39's joy. One day, the queen went to church, the 2 children were at home, and the king stood there looking at the statue with sadness and sighed, "Oh, faithful Johannes, I wish I could bring you back to life." The stone statue replied, "Your Majesty can resurrect me, if you are willing to sacrifice what you value most." At that time, the king said, "What I have in this world, I am willing to sacrifice for you." The stone statue continued, "If your Majesty personally beheads the 2 princes and smears the blood on the stone statue, I will come back to life." Hearing that he had killed his son himself, the king shuddered, but remembering that Johannes died because of his loyalty, the king immediately drew his sword, beheaded the 2 children, and smeared the statue with their blood. Johannes came back to life, healthy and alert. Uncle told the king, "Your Majesty, if you live in harmony and in common, that love will be rewarded." Then he inserted the head into the body, smeared blood around the cut wound, and in the blink of an eye the 2 children came back to life, playing and running around like before, as if nothing had happened before. The king was extremely happy. When he saw the queen returning, the king hid Uncle Johannes and his 2 children in a large cupboard. When the queen entered the room, the king asked, "Did the queen just go to church?" The queen replied, "I always think of loyal Johannes, a man who suffered because of us." At that time the king said, "My dear concubine, we can bring him back to life, but we have to sacrifice the 2 princes." Hearing this, the queen and number 39's face turned pale and her heart fluttered, but she said, "We are the ones at fault in this matter." The king was extremely happy to see that the queen thought the same as him. He stepped forward and opened the closet door to let loyal Johannes and his 2 children step out. The king said, "Thank God Johannes has been freed and our son is still with us." The king told the queen the whole story. From then on, the king, queen, 2 princes and loyal Johannes lived together in great happiness for the rest of their lives. Thank you for joining us for today's fairy tale. We hope these stories bring joy and meaning to your day. If you love our channel, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any exciting tales. Wishing you a good night and sweet dreams. See you in the next story.